Whether it's through WrestleMania, Universe Mode 101, or my surprisingly successful Simple Saturdays series, plenty of new people are finding my Universe Mode and getting into it every single day. So, naturally, one of the questions I often get asked because of how long the series is where, oh where do I start? Where do I begin with this massive project? Because my Universe Mode has been going on since WWE 13, so there's a lot to dig into. You might think, well, do I start at the beginning? Do I start from square one? No, you shouldn't do that because those videos are terrible, and I do not want to commit mass genocide through my terrible videos. Some people don't want to go that far because they only have so much time in which to watch my series, and going through 4 years of Universe Mode just to get caught up with what's going on now, that's a big ask for any fan that's new to my channel. So some people might think that my most recent WrestleMania pay-per-view would be the best place to start because it closes off all of the previous storylines and it kickstarts the next upcoming year in Universe Mode. All these new storylines really is a new beginning. It's as much of an end as it is a beginning. And it is probably the showcase of some of my best work to date. But I can't say that I agree with that either, because if you start at WrestleMania, then you're gonna miss out on my 5-on-5 tag team match at Survivor Series, the championship scramble match at SummerSlam, and just a variety of other storylines that I've been working on, a variety of other matches that I have made in the meantime. So we again circle back to this question: where do I begin? The answer to this question will probably change as I continue to make new content over the course of the next several games that come out, but I can think of at least 2 good starting points for my Universe Mode, judging by where we are now, and I'm going to use this video to explain why I feel this way. So when anybody asks me in the future, where should I start with your Universe Mode, then I can just link them to this video, and they can make their choice from there. So the first of these starting points is Payback in WWE 2K15. And you might wonder, well, why so late in the series? You're skipping over WWE 13 and 2K14? And that's not to suggest that WWE 2K14 or 13 have WWE 13 I don't think has any, at least good noteworthy moments. If you want to see some really bad booking, then you can go watch WWE 13 and you can just cringe at my horribleness. WWE 2K14, there are a couple of moments in there that they might be bad, but they're at the very least iconic, like The Undertaker joining The Shield. But the reason why I say to skip over all of that and start with Payback is twofold. First of all, this was the first event where I actually had decent footage because I figured out how to properly render things. Before, I did this weird process where the original recording file would be an MP4, and then I would convert it to Windows Media Video, and then uploading it to YouTube converts it back to MP4, so the footage looked like garbage, and I didn't know how to disable resampling, so there's always this weird like motion blur for any video that I made prior to Payback. And as well as that, just the whole process of converting the file from different formats, it took a very long time for rendering, because you had to convert everything, and then uploading the video to YouTube, where YouTube would have to convert it to MP4. It just was not good in any aspect of production. And it isn't good to look at, it's not pleasing to the eye to watch either. So you should skip over it for that reason. But another point in defense of Payback is that this was the first event where I really started to change up not just the technical visual presentation of the video in terms of what the video looks like, but in terms of how I started structuring my shows, how I would book my storylines, how I would just lay out the presentation as a whole. While Payback definitely isn't my best work, and I have improved by leaps and bounds in several of the videos that followed it, it was the first video where I really took a shot at the kind of style that I work with now. Before, I was evolving from the simulation controlling mix to slowly but surely I began taking control of everything. Payback had a little bit of simulation in it, but after that event, everything beyond that point was I was controlling. I was pulling the strings. I had my hand in all aspects of production. And then, of course, as far as the show, how the show looks, I was trying to go for more of a realistic this is like a TV show that you're watching. This is an episode of Monday Night Raw, of SmackDown. Try to make it look more like an actual show rather than me just playing a game. And I was kind of riding a mix between the two for a while, where the matches would be like an actual show, but then you had like loading screens, and the transitions were just kind of fade throughs, like crossfades. There weren't really any, like, there wasn't a graphic to transition to anything or whatnot. Payback, while I didn't necessarily use all of the techniques that I use now, it was the real foundation for where I started using those techniques. This also is where a lot of my main storylines started coming into motion. You had just a little before Payback was when Seth Rollins betrayed Dean Ambrose, and that storyline went all the way up to WrestleMania. So if you're just watching the Iron Man match, Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose, you're gonna miss the entire feud. You're losing out on the context. And yeah, you could just substitute what happened in real life as the foundation for this Dean Ambrose-Seth Rollins rivalry, but I feel as though my take on it is at least unique. It's not, I didn't follow the same story beats verbatim. While I was definitely inspired by their real life feud for making that storyline, making that rivalry, I tried to take it in at least what I felt was a different direction. I tried to put my own unique spin on it. So if you don't go back and watch the whole storyline, you're gonna miss the whole idea of Team Rollins. What exactly is the history between Seth Rollins and Blake and Murphy? What's going on with Seth Rollins and Baron Corbin? If you just start at WrestleMania, you don't know any of these connections. Seth Rollins is just a guy with henchmen, and okay, he's with Baron Corbin and the Revival. Cool. I don't know why he's with them, but this is a decision that this guy made, and that seems cool. This pushes me into my second ideal starting point, which is Survivor Series. From a technical standpoint, Survivor Series was far superior to anything I had made in the past. There was, again, you have the 5-on-5 tag team matchup, which was me attempting to push the boundaries of what the game was capable of, which prior to this I had only really done with the Championship Scramble at SummerSlam. So while you would be missing out on anything that happened at King of the Ring, Battleground, Night of Champions, SummerSlam, you are missing a bit there. I feel you'll be missing out on some context, but Survivor Series, if you want a good, like a WrestleMania, if you want a good start point but also like an end point, a lot happens at Survivor Series. There's a lot going on, both from a technical standpoint of constructing the show and from an idea booking standpoint. Because while Payback, I think, is where I started to improve with what I was doing, Survivor Series was where those improvements started to really take hold, and I had built up a bit more of a backstory, a credible backstory, I should say, going into Survivor Series, whereas Payback, I was coming off of the nonsense that had come before, the previous WrestleMania, Extreme Rules, Over the Limit. Not as good of a build-up as what Survivor Series got, where, Money in the Bank I thought was a really solid show, started to set up some storylines. SummerSlam in particular really was able to kind of close off anything that had been going on previously, and then continue to build on a couple of key storylines like Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, but then also start new, really have like a clean slate, which built into Survivor Series, which I feel was able to deliver more so on the emotional punch of each individual storyline. This isn't to suggest that Survivor Series is a perfect show, but I do feel it was a much better show than what came before it. After this was when I scrapped the pre-episode match cards, which was the in-game menu screen where you saw the lineup of each show. And before this, I had been moving more so into a real-life show production. And the one thing that had really been holding those previous episodes back was the matchup screens beforehand, which still broke the immersion that this is a game, because I was still showing like, oh, here's the match card and this is what's going to happen later in the episode. And it's just, for the type of show I was trying to run, it was the worst way to try to set up the show. I much prefer what I'm doing now, where each episode starts and it's one complete show. There's no moments there to break immersion. There's no, hey, we're playing a video game, guys, this is what's happening here. Before, I had done that all the way up to Survivor Series, and Survivor Series was when I finally decided to flip the switch to scrap those pre-match menu screens and just start the show and keep the show going without trying to break that atmosphere. And I feel as though the episodes that followed that were much better in terms of actual like watchability, like going back and trying to get immersed in what is happening, what each episode is presenting. I feel like you can get behind that much more than the episodes beforehand, where you still had at the very beginning breaking that immersion and just reminding that this is a game that you're watching. This isn't a real show, which is not what I wanted. I wanted to make a proper show, and I'm honestly not sure why it took me so long to drop them, because ideally I should have done that as early as, after Payback. I should have just scrapped it. But again, that was sort of this is really what separates Survivor Series and Payback, is that even before Survivor Series, I was still kind of making the transition to a full-blown production. I hadn't like fully committed to it. Like, I knew that I wanted to make shows and not make me playing a game into a show, if that makes any sense. But it wasn't until after Survivor Series that I really made the full commitment to it, and I finally dropped the old format, which, in my opinion, was for the best. There were some people who didn't seem too high on it, but at the end of the day, I make the kind of content that I want to make, and I feel as though it was the best decision. Each episode, like pay-per-views, I had been doing that for a while, not showing the match screen beforehand, but with the regular episodes, it just didn't carry over onto the regular shows, which I felt degraded their quality. I felt made them weaker in their own right. Now, there's also this idea that you could just kind of jump from pay-per-view to pay-per-view. So if you wanted to kind of mix these two starting points, you could start at the Payback pay-per-view and just kind of jump to Money in the Bank, to SummerSlam, to Night of Champions, King of the Ring, Battleground, and then at Survivor Series really start picking up on an episode-by-episode basis. It ultimately comes down to how much time you have and how much of the backstory you really want to get into. Of course, each individual episode is going to add more context to anything that happens in the future, because I do go back to those previous episodes, and I'll reference stuff from them or use them as a reference point for building storylines in the future, because you don't just go from pay-per-view to pay-per-view with storylines. You have to make sure that something happens on the regular shows. So that's why I would be hesitant to say just watch all the pay-per-views up until now, because yeah, you will kind of get the gist of things, but you're going to be missing a lot of context, and moving forward, I only feel as though that could negatively impact your future viewing experience, but ultimately it does all come down to you. I'd say that the only thing that you're really missing out on with these two starting points is the build-up to the Daniel Bryan CM Punk rivalry, because that started way back in WWE 13. But honestly, I do think it is worth missing out on that, because really the only reason why I think you should go back to watch anything before Payback in WWE 2K15 is if you really are invested in my content and me specifically, and you want to see my evolution as a creator. But the further back into my channel you go, the worse the content is going to get. So viewer discretion is advised for your own mental safety, that you don't subject yourself to my terrible content. If you're looking for if you're looking for entertainment, don't watch my old stuff, because it's not entertaining in the traditional way. If you want to watch something that maybe could be so bad that it's good, you could try to find value in that, but that's kind of what Behind the Universe is for, is me just picking apart my old work. So you don't really have to go back and watch it for your own experience, but if you really want to see how I've gone from being the insecure, terrible video making boy back in 2012 to the less terrible video making boy that I am now, you can do that. As time goes on, I'll undeniably add more starting points to this list. Like, WrestleMania is going to be another starting point in the future, but I don't feel as though enough time has passed that you should start there. This would also kind of help you, like if you're looking to watch more content from me and I'm not perhaps making Universe Mode videos at the rate that you would like, then if you start earlier, then you have more of a backlog to go through, and you have it'll take you longer to catch up. But if you don't have enough time to go back and watch that backlog, and you don't really care about my upload rate, then, you know, start at WrestleMania. I guess that also works. So really those are, I guess, the 3 starting points. But again, preferably, I think Survivor Series and Payback are the 2 ideals right now. Moving forward, WrestleMania will become more of an ideal. Like, once I start getting up to, like, SummerSlam and stuff, yeah, WrestleMania is gonna be something that I'll reference back to. But, I don't really have a way to end this video. This is the nature of this simple Saturday-like stuff, is that I don't plan any of this out, and I just talk about whatever, and this is the results. Words. Anyways, thank you for watching me. If you enjoyed, do the things, and until next time, keep on YouTubing.